All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, if you are a fan of the NBA, this is probably one of your favorite weekends of the year as the postseason is set to commence. Now, the play in tournament is over in the Eastern Conference, and now we know all four matchups for the first round in the East. And I want to get things started by talking about the AC, the Miami Heat, who just had to come from behind at home tonight against the Chicago Bulls in order to advance. And they're going to be taking on the top seed in the East, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. And these are two familiar foes that are prepping to face off again in recent years. Miami and Milwaukee have met a couple of times for the in the postseason. Very competitive series, and they get a chance to do it again. And for Miami, it's been all about their grit. But will that grit allow them to give the Bucks a run for their money? Now, everything for Miami at every end of the court starts and begins with Jimmy Butler. There's no question that Butler is the best player for the Heat. He is their heart and soul. He is their leader. But is he going to be able to do enough to get the Heat to pull off the upset against the Bucks? Bam Adebayo, he's given up some size on the interior, but he's still going to have to bring his A game. Tyler Hero, what are you going to give Miami? Max Strus and Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, of course, a veteran. It's not the Kyle Lowry that he was when he helped the Raptors win a championship a couple of years ago. And then, of course, Kevin Love, again, another veteran player, but he still knows how to go out there and get it done. Now, on the flip side for Milwaukee, are they ready for another title run? We saw the Bucks win it all 2 years ago. They looked poised to do it again last year until the Chris Middleton injury. And for this Milwaukee team, just like it is for Miami, it starts and ends with Giannis. And of course, Giannis is playing some of the best basketball of his career. He is truly the Greek freak. He is truly a freak of nature. And at the end of the day, you simply give him the basketball and you get out of his way. But you look at the supporting cast around Giannis. Drew Holiday, an underrated point guard. Brooke Lopez, he can hit that shot consistently from the outside. Bobby Portis, another guy who can hit the shot from the outside, but he can also score close to the basket. And both him and Lopez provide a lot of length at the defensive end of the floor for Milwaukee. Grayson Allen, a little underrated in my opinion, for Milwaukee. And you got to keep an eye on a guy like Pat Connaughton. Sometimes he can be cold, but sometimes he can be on from outside. The X factor in this series is going to be Chris Middleton. Of course, I talked about him. He's not in the rotation right now for Milwaukee. They're hopeful to get him back. And if he is back, and even if Milwaukee can get a 75% Chris Middleton, I think it's a huge shot in the arm for them. Now, you have Eric Spoelstra and Mike Budenholzer facing off as the head coaches, two coaches that have championships on their resume. Of course, Budenholzer 2 years ago when he helped Milwaukee win it all, and Spoelstra has a pair of championships as the head coach of the Heat. You look at the styles, and I think Miami. They want to slow it down. They want to play gritty. They want to keep it in the 80s and 90s, while Milwaukee wants to get on the open floor and run, spread the floor, and shoot you out of the gym. Who has the edge at the end of the day? For me, it's Milwaukee. I think they have the better team. They have the deeper team. They definitely have the taller team, and of course, that size advantage should help them on the boards on both ends of the floor. And at the end of the day, I'm going to take the Bucks to get past the Heat in 6 games. They got the two-seeded Boston Celtics getting ready to clash with the 7-seed Atlanta Hawks. And of course, Atlanta knocked off Miami in the first playing game, and they got through to the playoffs. But this series right here for me is going to come down to the star power. As far as Trae Young for Atlanta and Jason Tatum for Boston, and which player is going to shine the brightest for his respective team. We saw Trae Young put the Hawks on his back a couple of years ago in helping them get to the Eastern Conference Finals. We saw Tatum really take it to another level last year in helping the Celtics get to the NBA Finals. who's going to step up again this time. You look at Deontay Murray. He helped the Spurs get to the play-in tournament a couple of times, but this is really his first moment at the playoffs right here. John Collins is a very interesting guy for me for Atlanta. He's a player that really stepped up 2 years ago when the Hawks made that run to the conference finals. Does he have another run like that in him? We got to wait and see. You got DeAndre Hunter. Bogdan Bogdanovic is a guy who's familiar with the system of head coach Quinn Snyder. And again, if you leave him alone, he can knock down that 3-point shot. Clint Capella is going to be important in this series due to his ability at the defensive end of the floor, especially close to the basket. That's going to be important going up against the Celtics team as you look to slow down the likes of Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown at the basket. And for Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, sometimes, especially more Tatum than Brown, they tend to fall in love with the outside shot when I feel like 15 feet and in, there aren't that many people in the league that can stop them, especially when they're posting up. Jalen Brown's health, remember, he has a hand, had to get the 5 stitches in his hand, and that's going to be important. But you look at the bevy of ball handlers that Boston has with the likes of Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon. And Malcolm Brogdon was a big pickup for this team. And I think defensively, Boston has not been as good as they were last season, but it's a scenario where I could foresee the Celtics throwing different bodies and different looks at Trae Young throughout this series to try to slow him down. You're going to see Marcus Smart on him. You're going to see Brogdon on him. You might even see Derek White on him. So this is going to be important. You're darn sure going to see Jalen Brown on him at some point with that length, just to give him different looks and just to confuse him. Al Horford is still one of the better stretch bigs in the NBA. He can knock that shot down. Sometimes falls in love with it, but getting back to the defensive end, especially for the Celtics, is going to come down to the Williamses. I'm talking about Robert and Grant. Definitely more Robert than Grant. And then, of course, another guy that you got to pay attention to if you are Atlanta is Derek White, because he could be sneaky and drop a quick 15 on you. So Quinn Snyder's first go round in the playoffs with the Hawks. And of course, he took over mid-season. So this team is still trying to feel things out under him. While this is the first go around for Joe Mazzulla as the Celtics head coach in the postseason. Of course, he did a phenomenal job during the regular season, but of course, people only remember you when whether you succeed or don't succeed when the chips are pushed to the middle of the table. So that's going to be interesting to see how Mazzulla has his team ready for this series. Whichever team is able to focus on the defensive end of the floor will win this series. Who has the edge? Just like it was with the Bucks, I feel like the Celtics have the deeper team. They have the better team. And because of that, I'm going to take Boston to get past Atlanta in this series in 6 games. Now, you're in the 3-6 matchup, you're going to have the Philadelphia 76ers clashing with the Brooklyn Nets. And by hook or by crook, the Nets were able to piece it together and make it to the postseason. And of course, this was a very interesting season for the Nets. They began with championship hopes with the likes of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on this team. Of course, both were traded prior to the trade deadline. The Nets got back some quality players, but they don't have that star appeal that they once did. And how is that going to hurt them or help them going up against the Sixers? Now, you look at the job that Jacques Vaughn has done this season, and he's found a way to keep it all together. I love the spirit of this Nets team, and I love the way that they play with guys like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Nick Claxton. But at the end of the day, do the Nets have enough to slow down Joel Embiid? Possibly, Embiid is going to be the MVP of the league this season. You look at his scoring presence as well as his rebounding presence, and the Nets simply don't have anybody to stop him. You look at players around Embiid on the team, the likes of James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris, who has not always shown up in the postseason, but I think he can be a factor in this series for Philadelphia. Doc Rivers, it's one of those scenarios where, hey, you know what? People are always going to question Doc's teams in the postseason, but I don't think this is a series where that's going to happen. The Sixers are the better team. To me, I think the Nets are one of the feel-good stories of the latter part of the NBA season. But here in the postseason, is where you need those stars in order to advance. The Nets don't have it. And because of that, I'm picking Philly to take care of business in 5 games. And finally, a very intriguing series, in the East has the fifth seeded New York Knicks taking on the fourth seeded Cleveland Cavs. I talked about this series a little bit several weeks ago, and both of these teams have a lot to prove in this series. For New York, will it be different in the postseason than it was in 2021? Remember, 2 years ago, the Knicks came out of nowhere to have the fourth best record in the East. And, their fan base really got behind them, but then they lost in 5 games in the first round to Atlanta. For Cleveland, they came out of nowhere last year to make the play-in tournament. And they're looking to build off of that. And they're hoping that that experience in the play-in tournament will lead to bigger and better things for them this postseason. But for the Knicks, first and foremost, they got to find a way to slow down Cavs guard Donovan Mitchell. And I say that because Donovan Mitchell is already a star player. Make no mistake about it. He definitely wants to put on a show in this series for a variety of reasons. Number one, he's a Knicks fan. Okay. Number two, he wanted to play for the Knicks. And, of course, the deal did not go through. And then thirdly, star players, especially a guy like Donovan Mitchell, always want to put on a show at Madison Square Garden. And of course, at least for games 3 and 4, MSG is going to be the place for this series. Now, for the Knicks, doesn't look like they're going to have Julius Randle at least to begin this series with that ankle injury. And that's going to be important. Jalen Brunson has been a difference maker for the Knicks this season. And is he going to be part of the committee? Because I don't think it's going to be one guy that the Knicks are going to put out there to try to guard Donovan Mitchell. But what is Jalen Brunson going to do against Mitchell? We got to wait and see. Will a guy like RJ Barrett be able to step up in this series? The other players for the Knicks, the likes of Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson is going to be important in this series around the basket on both ends of the floor, as is Emmanuel Quickly. For Tom Thibodeau, throughout his career, he's been known for his defense with his teams. Defense is going to be a key if the Knicks are going to win this series. For the Cavs, like I said, they're definitely trying to build off of last year's trip to the play-in tournament. And then after you made the acquisition of Donovan Mitchell, you don't want to be one and done in the postseason. And I talk about Mitchell. I think Mitchell is going to have a big time impact in this series. But it's not just about Donovan Mitchell with Cleveland. You got to keep an eye on a guy like Evan Mobley. I talked about the importance of Mitchell Robinson for the Knicks. Jared Allen is somebody you have to worry about around the rim at both ends of the floor as well, and then Darius Garland. So this Cavs team, they're not a one-trick pony. It's going to come down to who's going to win the battle of the boards. I talked about Jared Allen for Cleveland. I'm also talking about Mitchell Robinson. Of course, which one of those guys is going to be able to consistently stay out of foul trouble? That's going to be another big part of it. JB Bickerstaff, he's a guy that he might be young as far as a head coach, as far as his inexperience, but I think he's very seasoned beyond his years, if you know what I mean. This is going to be a very intriguing series. I think it's going to be a back and forth seesaw edge. It's a toss up. It's going to come down to who makes adjustments, who executes. And in most games throughout this series, in my opinion, it's going to come down to the last 2 or 3 minutes. Who is going to have the nerves of steel when the chips are pushed to the middle of the table? When it's all said and done, I am going to give a slight edges to the Cleveland Cavaliers, as I'm going to take them to get past the Knicks in 7 games. So that's how I am seeing the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs in this NBA postseason playing out. And with that said, I want to take this time to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.